How we doing, everybody? Welcome to Branding Part 2. This is where we're going to review the articles. Before we get into that, I'm going to send you this link sometime in the very near future, and you can see if or how Dr. Dano ate some of his own clean chowder. That said, we're going to move on to our first article. We're probably going to go in order here. How the French innovators are putting the social back in social networking. Now, if you notice, in the very first paragraph of this article, we have the word counterintuitive. I love this word. I love when you hear something that goes against the grain. I love when you hear something that is the complete opposite of what you expected. That's what counterintuitive is. So, if you see when this article was written, it was in 2010, and this was really at the height of Twitter and Facebook and the media being all over them, and then all of a sudden, someone writes an article saying, no, I really like being social, but I like being social face-to-face and not electronic. And leave it to the French to be contrarian, but yes, they're the ones that, where the inspiration where this article came from. So, the main purpose of this article was to give you a different perspective. The main purpose of this article was to emphasize that we've seen in previous articles this semester how important qualitative research is. Listening to customers. It's a very big deal. Another important aspect of this article is that please understand, we tend to be looking at this argument from a U.S.-centric view, where all these social tools, these electronic social tools are used. It may not be the case. Depending on what country you're in or what cultural differences or governmental restrictions exist, just know that outside the U.S. there could be different cultural standards. The last thing that I wanted to emphasize in this article was, and it's really why this image is up here, up on the screen, and that's to always come back to this Tipping Point book by Malcolm Gladwell. I know it's getting a little long in the tooth here. This was originally published in 2002. To the best of my knowledge, there is not one internet or social media anything mentioned in this book. But in this article, the way the French firms are picking very important influencers or connectors to help spread the word viral, that's really what this book stresses more than anything else. If you want something to go viral, Malcolm Gladwell gives you a decent blueprint on how to do it. Particularly finding influencers, mavens, connectors, and then courting them. Just the way some of the firms in this article courted, particularly the fashion houses, courted their most influential customers. Okay? Our next article is What's Your Personal Social Media Strategy? Right? And this one, along with Reinventing Your Personal Brand, and the one after that, A Smarter Way to Network, these are all very similar in vein. I know this module this week is about branding, but at the same time, I wanted to talk about the human brand. You as a brand. How you can help brand yourself, and how you can help use social media to do this. So I really like in the beginning of this article here, as I'm holding the article up, it's this middle paragraph, how this executive didn't realize the power of social. And when I do consulting and when I go to firms, this is usually the conversation that I start with. Whether you like social or not, whether you think social or is important or not, you have to understand that in this day and age, people, consumers, competition, the business press are having the conversation without you, whether you realize it's there or not. The question is, do you want to be a part of that conversation? Or can you avoid being left out of that conversation? If the answer is yes to particularly the second question, and most probably the first one as well, you have to get involved with social. And this is really a fantastic exemplar. The other excellent part of this article is on page 129 at the top in these 4 boxes. And this is something really for you as a nugget to take away. Finding the right presence depending on what you want to do. Do you want to be, is this a personal social network and it's really relatively private? Is it professional and private? Is it personal and public or professional and public? I think it's difficult to mix these up. And you might have different goals for different messages or different personas. You might have a private self and you might have a public self. My Facebook is relatively private. That is family and friends. But my LinkedIn and my Twitter are professional and public. And the blog is professional and public. I really don't have personal and public because, I'm a business professor, so I'm more professional and public. Okay? I think that's a nice nugget and a way for you to think about how to separate all this stuff. Reinventing your personal brand, Dorie Clark. One of the things that I really liked about this article, on the very first page, about halfway down here, there's a quote. And it says, Longfellow noted, we judge ourselves by what we feel capable of doing. In other words, we tend to judge ourselves about the present and the future, while others judge us by what we've already done. In other words, we judge ourselves by the present and the future. Everybody else judges us by the past. And you have to understand that if you're going to have a consistent brand story, and why we're talking about that, here's my next recommendation that I read this summer. Love this book, The Storytelling Animal, How Stories Make Us Human. It's a fantastic book. I have about 10 other storytelling books if this is really something you're interested in. Your brand story needs to be consistent. There needs to be a narrative. I went to this school that led me to this position where I met this person, and then this person led me to this firm where I gained this experience, and this experience is where I got this consulting firm from, got this original idea to do this entrepreneurial project. That's a consistent story. It really helps when it's time to make your personal brand. Something else not as influential, but something that I like a whole lot. On the bottom of the same page, 129, literally the last 3 lines going into page 180, we're talking about Robert Reich, and that he's not very tall. And there's something to be said about self-depreciating humor. And I've never done this study, and sometime during my academic life I'm going to have to do this study because I do a lot of celebrity endorsement kind of stuff. But people who have self-depreciating humor, I bet you, are significantly more liked than people who do not. Even if the people who do not don't say anything wrong, there's something about self-depreciating humor that makes you more liked. Okay. Also on page 180, develop a narrative. This is what, maybe I jumped the gun a little bit here by talking about the storytelling animal, but that's really what I was referring to. Overall, nice, short and sweet, good article. Next, a smarter way to network. Basically, this is our networking article for the semester. If you need networking skills or you really love networking skills, here's your book recommendation for you. I just finished this towards the end of the summer. Reid Hoffman is the co-founder of LinkedIn. He was also highly involved in PayPal, which is how I became a millionaire in the first place. One of the points that both Rob and Rob in this article were trying to make is called the strength of weak ties. Okay, that's exactly how it's phrased. The strength of weak ties. If you have really, really, really good tight friends, and your friends work at the same company with you, read all the same books as you, read the same blogs as you, and listen to the same podcasts as you, and you go to lunch and dinner and happy hour with these same friends, what they're going to be able to learn and share with each other, you guys, is not going to have much variability. It's all going to be the same because you're all in the same spot at the same time. However, if you have friends that you went to high school with, that went to a different college, that got a different job, that maybe you don't see them on a monthly or even more than 2 or 3 times a year, but you're still connected through them through social, that's known as a weak tie. Your tight friends that you work with, that you see every day, is a strong tie. It's the weak ties is where you find out about things that your tight social network doesn't know about. It's the weak ties that you find out about jobs, that you find out about other things that your tight social network doesn't hear. What very good master networkers do is they make sure that they have an incredibly strong number of weak ties. Weak ties is how you learn faster. Weak ties is how you find out about things quicker. The strength of weak ties. That's detailed. It's actually in tons and tons and tons of books, but it's definitely in this book too. And this is the most recent one published, so. Okay, there's Reed. Say hi to Reed. Okay. The last thing that I really want to hammer here in this article is also on the front page. Okay. I'm on page 149. I'm in the beginning of the last paragraph on the page. And it says, "The old adage, it's not what you know, but who you know, is true. Let me say that I disagree with this statement wholeheartedly. It is who you know, but given the strength of your weak ties, it's also what you know. The only way you get a network, having your network, it's transactional. You exchange information for information. Sometimes it's a favor for a favor. Master networkers always do a favor first so they can call favors in. A master networker always knows people, and it's quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. Sorry, I tried to say that too fast. It is what you know, because if you don't have anything to exchange, there's not going to be anything in it for your connection for you to have a connection, the networking. Otherwise, it's just going to be someone that you have in LinkedIn, and you have 700 people on LinkedIn, and 400 of those people said, yes, I'm going to connect to you, but if you have nothing to offer them, they're not going to offer you anything back. It is what you know, and it is who you know, and hopefully you have a stronger connection of weak ties in your network. Diversity, variability. Okay. Next. Who's this ugly guy here on this page? If we look to see at the top of this page, this is www.CompProBiz Marketing. I know this is a really long thing, but this is if you type in my name and Google versus Groupon, let's revolutionize or fix, this article is going to come up. This was an article that I was invited to write about at the time when Groupon was struggling very much. And I'm not going to go through this article right now, but this is very much in the spirit of the future of shopping. Okay? I know the beginning of this article on page 66 sounds very Minority Report-like, but oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot this. Let me give you something else. You guys absolutely positively have to read this one. I should have talked about this. Okay. This right here, this is my favorite blog. I'll send you the links to these when I send you the email on some admin stuff. Angela is the current CEO of Burberry, and she's going to be the soon, in February 2014, Executive VP of Apple. And this video here that's not popping up at the moment is a less than a 4-minute better version of this article that we just talked about. That Burberry's actually doing it. That Burberry, when you walk in and you check in, all the digital screens around you will go to things of your preference as you walk towards them. If you pick up one of their specialty bags, the tables have sensors on them. And as soon as you touch the table, the screen next to it shows you how that bag is made. Or you're trying on one of their $2,000 coats, and as you're trying it on in the mirror has sensors that recognizes that you're trying on that coat, and it starts telling you a story of how it's made. This is a fantastic 4-minute video that you have to watch. Right? But I think this is a very good example how when we talk about branding and developing a relationship with a particular brand, in particular a retailer, that people still like brick and mortar stores. It's not as much as I talk about Amazon and eBay and the Netflix of the world. You know, people still have a connection. This article talks about Jordans in Boston. I have furniture in my house from Jordans. We used to take our kids when they were little to Jordans almost like we would take them to some activity for them to go play, because they would have a show every hour. They would have 50-cent ice creams. They would have all kinds of, little coins you give the kids for them to go up to the machines to go get M&Ms. I mean, it was a wonderful experience to take little kids. I'm sure if you go to YouTube and you type in Jordan's furniture, you're going to find a ton of videos about Jordans. It's closer to going to Disney World or Disneyland than it is to going to a big box retailer like Walmart. That's what Jordans is. And I think retailers are going to have to think a little bit differently these days and do stuff like this. I was just listening to the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders. Here you go. I'm going off on another tangent for you. ETL Stan DA. One of my favorite blogs, really podcasts, is Entrepreneurial Thought Leader Seminar from Stanford. And this right here, this is what I just listened to this week. The founder and CEO of Shopkick, and his 50-minute story of how he got his app Shopkick, which is really a loyalty card on steroids beyond steroids, is a fantastic fit with the article here. If any of you are in retailing and this article really jazzed you up beyond jazzing you up, you have to listen to this story about Shopkick. I love this article, how it's merging, even though it's a little bit futuristic, merging the digital world with the physical world. I think it's fantastic. There's an article on page 71, right-hand column on the thing. They're talking about Disney. Disney has been testing, let me go back to this. Disney has been testing, it looks like a Nike Fuel band all summer. And this band not only is your key to get in your hotel room, it's not only, all your money to go into the Disney restaurants and to buy things. It's also your fast pass. It's also your pass to get into the parks. It also gives Disney GPS tracking about everywhere you've been and what you've done, how long you've spent on which rides. It's an incredible experience device. To wrap up this article, page 72, we have a nice feeling or story here about CRM and developing a better relationship with our customers, because we want our existing customers to come back and us have a stronger relation. You've heard all that stuff. Also on page 72, we have Jordans. Also, Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops are two other very good stores along these lines. And the last nugget for this article is on page 74. Right here on the, basically within the first paragraph, there's a quote that says, "Remember John Wanamaker's favorite lament that he knew he was wasting half of his advertising budget, but didn't know which half." The quote goes, "I know I'm wasting half my budget, I just don't know which half." And to me, that is the marketing I want to get away from. One of the reasons why I love digital so much is because not only does it accomplish the CRM goal, but it's also better for ROI purposes. Finally, let's do some branding chat. And a lot of these articles were short and sweet, and please forgive me for adding the bonus article for the week. I rarely do this, but I decided to do this. This is Susan Fournier, and she has a co-author that she's worked with at Harley. Getting brand communities right. In a previous article on branding, we talked about subcultures of consumption. Well, just like relationship marketing and CRM are two extremely similar terms, one-to-one marketing, very, very similar term, that if you really peel the layers back, we're just really talking about buzzwords, but in essence, it's the same thing. Well, a brand community is a subculture of consumption. And I wanted to make sure the brand community actually is the more popular non-academic term. Subcultures of consumption is more of the academic term, and brand community is more of the non-academic term. Okay? Through this article, there are 7 myths. Okay? And there is a common theme that I want to stress in these 7 myths, and foreshadowing towards one of our November modules on leadership. And that this is not something coming from the brand manager that the brand manager creates and controls. A brand community and a subculture in consumption is a bottom-up enterprise. The crowd makes the decisions, and the brand manager is a participant in the crowd, not the director or the leader or the general of the crowd. And if you notice that, and you look at myth 1, particularly myth 2, and particularly myth 7, successful brand communities are tightly managed and controlled. Myth, reality. Of and by the people, communities defy managerial control. Most companies, when a brand community goes nuts or haywire, it's because the brand manager or the company is trying to rein in tight control on the community. And that's not how communities work. It's a wisdom of crowds type of thing. To wrap up this article, some other very, very excellent components of this article. On page 108, the 3 forms of community affiliation. This is very good. This is a solid nugget. That there are webs and hubs, but the one that didn't make as much sense until you read the article is pools. And this is more of a bottom-up mentality. I love on page 109 the common community roles. I like that. Mentor, learner, storyteller, historian. Most of these are bottom-up roles. Note, note, note. I like that also, the sampling of community scripts. Very, very good stuff. Awesome nuggets if this is the route you're going to go to. So I thank you for your time. I'm going to start working on our questions video today as well. Have a good one.